I don't crave approval because I'm weak. I crave it because I've forgotten how to see myself without someone else's eyes. There are moments when I catch myself waiting for someone's reaction before I decide how to feel. I finish something, say something, choose something, and instead of trusting my own judgment, I look outward. I wait for a nod, a smile, a comment, a sign that what I did is acceptable, valuable, or good. And when I don't receive that sign, I feel uneasy. I feel uncertain. I feel like something is missing. This dependence on approval follows me quietly, shaping how I act, how I speak, and even how I see myself. Why do I depend so much on what others think of me? When I look honestly at myself, I see that approval gives me something I struggle to give myself, a sense of worth. When someone approves of me, I feel seen. I feel validated. I feel like I matter. Approval becomes a mirror I use to understand who I am. And when that mirror is missing, I feel lost. One of the reasons I depend on approval is fear. Fear of rejection, fear of judgment, fear of being misunderstood. I want to be accepted. I want to belong. I want to avoid conflict. Approval feels like protection. It feels like safety. It feels like a shield against the possibility that someone might not like me, respect me, or value me. Another reason I depend on approval is insecurity. When I doubt myself, I look outward for confirmation. I want someone to tell me that I am doing well, that I am enough, that I am on the right path. Approval becomes a substitute for inner confidence. Instead of trusting my own voice, I borrow the voices of others. I also depend on approval because I grew up learning that acceptance is earned. I learned that being good, being obedient, being successful, or being pleasing leads to praise. And praise feels like love. Over time, I began to associate approval with affection. I began to believe that if people approve of me, they care about me. And if they don't, something is wrong with me. Another reason I depend on approval is comparison. When I compare myself with others, I feel behind. I feel inadequate. I feel like I must prove myself. Approval becomes a way to measure my value. If others approve of me, I feel equal. If they don't, I feel inferior. Comparison turns approval into a currency, something I must earn to feel worthy. I also depend on approval because I fear being alone with my own judgment. My inner voice is often critical. It focuses on flaws, mistakes, and weaknesses. It rarely offers encouragement. And when my inner voice is harsh, I seek softer voices outside. Approval becomes a way to escape my own self-criticism. Another reason approval feels necessary is that I often confuse it with truth. When someone praises me, I believe them. When someone criticizes me, I believe them even more. I treat others' opinions as facts, even when they are subjective, emotional, or inaccurate. Approval becomes a compass I rely on because I don't trust my own direction. I also depend on approval because I want harmony. I want relationships to be smooth. I want conversations to be peaceful. I want people to feel comfortable around me. Approval becomes a way to avoid tension. I adjust myself to fit expectations, even when those expectations don't match who I truly am. Another reason approval controls me is that I fear disappointing others. I fear letting them down. I fear not meeting their standards. Approval becomes a way to maintain an image of being capable, kind, responsible, or strong. And when I depend on that image, I depend on approval to maintain it. I also depend on approval because I forget that my worth is not something others can give or take away. I forget that worth is inherent. I forget that it comes from who I am, not from how others respond to me. Approval becomes a substitute for identity, a fragile identity built on external reactions. But when I look deeper, I see that dependence on approval is not a sign of weakness. It is a sign of longing, the longing to be seen, understood, valued, and loved. Approval is not the problem. The problem is believing that approval is the only way to feel whole. The question is not how to eliminate the desire for approval, but how to free myself from dependence on it. When I begin to understand my dependence, I see that approval becomes less powerful when I strengthen my inner world. When I learn to trust my own judgment, approval becomes optional. When I learn to accept my imperfections, approval becomes lighter. When I learn to speak honestly, approval becomes less necessary. When I learn to value myself, approval becomes a bonus, not a requirement. Dependence on approval also softens when I stop comparing myself with others. Their path is not my path. Their pace is not my pace. Their opinions are not my identity. When I stop measuring myself through others, I begin to see myself more clearly. Another way dependence softens is through honesty. When I admit that I crave approval, I stop hiding it. I stop pretending to be independent. I stop pretending to be unaffected. Honesty opens the door to change. Dependence also fades when I learn to tolerate discomfort. Approval feels comfortable. Disapproval feels uncomfortable. But discomfort is not danger. Discomfort is growth. When I allow myself to feel discomfort without running from it, approval loses its grip. And finally, dependence softens when I learn to love myself. Not perfectly, not dramatically, but quietly. When I treat myself with kindness, approval becomes less necessary. When I forgive myself, approval becomes less urgent. When I respect myself, approval becomes less defining. I depend on approval because I am human, but I can learn to live with freedom. The freedom to be myself, even when others don't approve.